Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Flash. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I do love that this episode was just kind of like a fun episode. Obviously, it brought up some really interesting things. Obviously, Barry, is saving the day. He locks up, brings 3 criminals, and, everyone at the CCPD thanks him and everything. But Kristen's issue with it is we don't have any evidence tying them. It's the Flash grabs him and brings him here, sure. But the complication with that is that we have no evidence to really try them. So it's we got to do a lot of footwork on our part to be like, all right, here's these criminals the Flash brought us. He doesn't really communicate with us. So we have to fill out the paperwork, actually go gather the evidence to prove the crime. So it's him just dropping off criminals is cool and everything, but it does a lot of legwork. It complicates things for the cops. It's you could help, because I could get why all the criminal has to be I was doing nothing. You can't prove it. So you have to do a lot of backtracking to figure out what crime was actually committed and what a crime actually is attributed to what criminal, especially when he grabs 3 different criminals who they were in the process of doing something, but some of them didn't actually do it. The guy was breaking into a car. I don't know. I mean, sure, the crime is still breaking into the car, but no one was a witness to it except for the Flash. So that ends up being a conversation. And I love that Joe's well, it's a little different. You had a beeline to me. So any issues I have, I could always contact you. And Cecile's the same way too. And it's but Barry's yeah, but you guys are family. It's well, yeah, but Kristen still can be trusted too. And so for Barry, he thinks right, if I just handle things, if I double my efforts as a forensic analysis, then I could cover the bases of where I'm shortcoming as the Flash in the regards of that sounded wrong. Shortcoming as the Flash. Shortcomings as the Flash still sounds bad now that I've kind of pointed out the innuendo there. Regardless, because it immediately makes me think of that reverse Flash, it was me, Barry, it was me the entire time. That whole thing, it just made me think of that because I saw that recently. The meme obviously still pops up from time to time, so it popped up in my head just now. But regardless, the point is he's trying to make up for some of how he mishandles things, certainly as a Flash, and he's trying to compensate for it as Barry Allen as the forensic analysis analyst, but it's still, and which Kristen appreciates, but it's still the thing of, I would want Barry to help out, because she did bring up early on, there's certain complications about my job that if we work together, it would ease things. And we find out later on what that complication is. She can't control her powers. She's now a metahuman, but the problem is her powers are out of her control. And she wanted to work with the Flash because she hoped that by working with him, she'd be able to learn to control her powers. Especially when you have a power that's basically anytime you're near any metahuman, you're going to mimic their powers for 30 seconds. I wonder, will she ever be able to extend that range? And will she ever be able to do it back to back? So could she shift from one power, for example, touch Barry, get his super speed, touch Goldface, get his power? Could it work like that, or would she need a buffer zone in between? I'm curious how the full extent of her powers. I mean, Barry's trained other metahumans outside of speedsters, whether it be a Ralph situation or, he's learned how to operate around other people's abilities like Cisco's or Frost's ability. So this isn't new territory for him in any shape or form. So, but I do Goldface just breaks into the GCP. I mean, I said GCPD. Got Gotham on the mind. But the fact is that Goldface broke in there, and the moment he was there, I was the last time we saw you was I want to say that was season 6, the whole him and Amunet thing. And it's they're still together because he calls, and I love when Barry's looking and listening to the sweet talk between them. It's it's super cute. I wonder the fact is that Barry was oh, you go see Doctor. I was is that supposed to be the same doctor he goes to, him and Iris went to for relationship counseling and stuff like that? I wonder, is that what that was? Maybe I'm mistaken. The fact is Barry said that. So it's does she see both hero and villains? Because I forgot whether or not she knows the truth about their circumstance. I think their therapist, their couple counselor or therapist knows about Barry situation. I can't remember now, but I was like, that's why I was wondering why Barry asked that. It seemed like that might be the thing, but it is super cute to know, like, hey, you guys are still together, you're doing your thing, and he's like, yeah, we're not only better partners in relationship, but they're actually better partners in crime, and it's been a lot more lucrative. And Barry's almost like, that's actually really sweet that, it's like, right, crime brought you guys together, like you were at odds, but you found union. You ran two different gangs, and now you found collaboration between each other in more ways than one. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. But it's like, yeah, it's actually kind of super cute. And like I said, it adds the fun to the episode, especially when it comes to, like, Goldface's second in command was a Carver. And I love that he's, like, referencing, like, oh, Moby Dick or what, like, Goldface is referencing Moby Dick, and his right hand man, it's like, yeah, it's time for you to walk the plank. And he's like, wait, that's not, do you not know Moby Dick? And he's like, what? No. And then he starts, like, making these, like, references that, like, is over his, like, right hand guy's, like, head, and he's just like, I got you a first edition of a certain book, and, like, you wasted it, didn't you? And I love that he just looks like, oh my god, you're part of my gang, and you uncultured swine. Like, how do you not know this? Because at first I was like, is he referencing Captain Hook when he's just like, oh, off to the plank with you? But I'm like, no, it's probably like very generic pirate thing of like, he thinks Moby Dick is about pirates or something. Maybe that's the like generic thing. Like you're just generically speaking like pirate terms of like, oh, it's time for you to walk the plank. Either way, I love that whole bit. And even later on, asking the cop Corbin, like asking her name is like, now what's your name? Corbin. Now, was that the K or C? And she's like, a K. And he's like, oh, thank you. And I'm like, I love that whole bit. And then later on, when he's arrested, and he's like, can one of you guys get that for me? Because it's Amunet calling. He's like, well, I can't help it. And, it's like, I'm in love. And I'm like, it's actually really sweet. I love it. I do love that they do have, like, a lot of fun with it. It's like, yeah, there's danger, but there's some fun with it. I was so curious because it's interesting to know that Goldface, his main reason for coming here is because he's trying to get the anti-meta bullets, the bullets that could take away a meta's abilities. Because a general, I would almost be worried about it because I'm like, you as a meta, wouldn't you be worried that someone would try to use that against you? Like, I don't know, the last thing you want is someone who's like, who was formerly like Kramer, who was super anti-meta. Last thing you want is that out there, but it's like, as long as I make my profits, who cares? Like, I just feel like I think as a meta, I'd be too worried about that kind of getting used against me, but all that matters is the money and profits, because it seemed like this is a collaborative effort between him and Amunet. Amunet's off in London, and he's here, which I love that he's like, now, be careful about, like, we talked about, like, don't be careful, like, what you eat, make sure you're eating a more balanced diet and stuff like that, and not just like, so I was like, once again, it's just like, it's so weird to hear like them talk like that. Once again, it's super sweet, but, yeah, that's what this was all about. Sadly, they're wearing anti-meta cuffs because he knew that Kramer is a meta, so who's to say what other person here might be a meta too. So just to cover all our bases, this way we have a whole bunch of hostages, and also any potential secret metas here are on lockdown. So the powers are dampened, plus those are essentially bombs strapped to their wrists. So it's like, cool. That's great. So, but Barry was trying to help out with the devices. Like, cool, this will help find the bullets. But I knew something was up when he was over there, like, fiddling with his ears. I was like, what was that about? I was like, oh, he was putting in earplugs. So him and Kramer got away, but obviously Barry was like, right, I just need you to give me a window of opportunity. I'll get the cuff off. She's like, yeah, but it's going to be an explosion. Like, if you tamper with them, they're automatically going to explode. And so Kramer, like, is scared because she's already been through this before, where she feels like she feel like in her military time, that was the whole thing, in her storyline. Like, she resented a lot of metas because, it's, her circumstances of losing every person she cared about, except for, like, she blamed herself, being like, I failed them. So now it's like, right, I don't want my failure, because, like, right, if I accidentally mimicked the wrong ability, I could kill a whole bunch of people. And who's to say, like, in this moment, I'll be able to get control of Goldface's abilities and be able to count on it when the time comes. I don't want to be responsible for anyone else's death, because, if I have to die, that's one thing, but I'm not going to let anyone else die for my sake. I've been down that route before. I'm not going to go do it again. And so, luckily Barry was able to kind of coach her through it. It's like, right, the military already trained you. Trust your instincts. Like, when Goldfinger's powers come to you, just let them in and let your instincts take over. And so when the time comes, she does her thing and she holds off. I love that he's like, "Whoa, what happened to the watch?" And she's like, "Yeah, didn't work with my outfit." I'm like, "Yo, I like the cheek. I love the one-liners." And then Barry breaks off his bracelet. You know, he's luckily got his upgrade. He's leveled up again, so he outruns the explosion. Shows up as the Flash, takes everyone down immediately, and it's like, "Yeah, the day is saved. Everything's great." You know, so it all works out in the end. But Barry, you know, late again. Once again, that's the irony behind it. It's like, you might be the fastest man alive, but you're still always late for work type of situation. I think it's the same thing for like Clark and everything too. Like, despite being Superman, it's like, right, you were always kind of running late regardless. I guess that's always just meant to be the irony of the characters. Like, you're super fast, but you're still, because you're so busy, like being super fast, saving the day, it kind of puts you behind schedule everywhere else. Because you are probably running circuits around the city dealing with any crime that might be going down. But I love that when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, you have Kramer, you know, Kristen thanking Barry because it's like, right, I couldn't have been able to do what I did without you. And obviously the Flash didn't stick around long enough, but I wanted to thank him as well. And Barry comes back later on as a Flash and like, right, I'm gonna help you. And it's like, right, I got to open up to you about everything. And she's like, I already know who you are, Barry. And he's like, how'd you figure it out? It's like, that's always a thing, like, Barry does that so often where it's like, okay, I know it's you, Barry. What? It happens too often at this point. It is a running bit. And it's like, but her situation is like, no, I found, like, your bracelet. It's like, yeah, the way this thing exploded, there's no way you could have gotten away with it if it wasn't for super speed. So I knew the only person you could beat is the Flash. And it makes a lot of sense. He's like, all right. But, you know, you are, like Joe said, a really good cop. And he's like, I love, you know, to help make you an even better meta too. So I'm like, yeah, a nice partnership going forward. You know, and it's like, right, we're going to be a lot more copacetic, a lot more cooperation between the Flash and I almost said GCPD again, the CCPD. So that was kind of a nice touch. I love some other elements in this episode. We're slowly but surely progressing everything between Allegra and Chester. I love that it's so, like, he's like, oh, I don't want to leave, because the moment I leave to go get something to eat, even if it's 4 minutes, that's enough time for, like, crime to happen, a nuclear, like, situation to go down. So it's kind of like, all right. So he decided to stay. But luckily, Allegra bought him something, and he's just like, oh yeah, like, you know, I figured it was like around lunchtime, and he's like, wow, this is almost like a lunch date. She's like, yeah, you've definitely checked all the boxes for a date. And he's like, I do. And she's like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, but you do too. I'm like, I love how awkward you are. It's so adorable. You two are too adorable together, and I love it so much. And even later on, like when he's doing his live stream, and she's in the back, kind of Vanna Whiting it a little bit, like the whole, like, oh, like, look at the tag, hey. And then, like, Caitlin walks in, he's like, I am live streaming. She's like, oh, because she was up there complaining about Mark and Frost, their whole, like, date situation. I love it. And he's like, oh, like, she was, like, super upset, like, oh, I can't stand, like, them. It's like, oh, how Frost spends so much time with him. And I love that it's like, oh, someone asks us, like, oh, who's that lady? And why? Oh, her sister sounds more awesome to her than her, or something like that. And she's like, what? And Chester's just like, I'm gonna end the live stream now. So, but it's like, yeah, like it was like a fancy ritzy restaurant that they Mark and Caitlin were gonna go to, and it's like, yeah, going to some expensive place like that. But then Chester was like, yeah, it wouldn't be too bad of an idea or something. And they're looking at each other and they're just like, oh, it's just awkward. I love it. I don't think it's kind of like the future thing, like 2031, like in Armageddon. I don't think they've had that awkward thing of, oh, we've accidentally slept together. I think it's just like they've kind of figured out how they feel about each other, and things are just a little awkward. Like how do we handle this? How do we go from friends to something more? And just we're tiptoeing towards that. But it's super adorable. I love every bit of progression we get with that. But obviously, Caitlin, we actually get to meet the Mark that we just found. Well, it is interesting that she's dating a Mark, and Frost is dating a Mark, and Caitlin's dating a Marcus, who's a botanist, interestingly enough. Obviously, they were referencing, they call him like, Dr. Ficus or something like that. It's also interesting timing, because obviously with Batwoman, we got technically 2 poison ivies this season, so... But I love that, like, Caitlyn's super against this, and obviously when she found out the place they were going to, which is kind of a little seedy, it's like, oh, cool. Mark and Frost are doing karaoke. Let's leave. Hey, we get to meet. Hey, double date. And Marcus is all about it. In fact, Mark and Frost really like Marcus. They're like, hey, he's actually pretty dope because he knows about a cactus that you can make into a cocktail and stuff. So they're all hitting it off. But every chance she gets, Caitlyn's poo-pooing their relationship and being like, oh, did they tell you about the time they met? It's because Mark killed people. It's like, I do love that we're kind of glossing over that. It's like, well, yeah, it's got to make you feel a little weird, but it's like, yeah, but he turned state evidence and now he helped save the city, so he's rehabilitated. It's like, I still wouldn't be too keen on like the whole, well, I am sitting here from someone who has he's killed people. It's like, because Frost hasn't killed anyone. Granted, she did stab Mark, so it's like not the most... It's a wild ride of a relationship. It's like, I mean, but I guess it's like the whole thing of like, we've all got spotty bits throughout our past and stuff like that. We've all kind of got shady parts to it. It's like, yeah, but you're kind of the only one there that's kind of murdered someone, so that's a little, ugh. But we'll kind of gloss over that for now. But like I said, any chance she got, like, Caitlyn would crap on Mark. And part of me was wondering, like, I kind of inferred that it was probably about the Ronnie thing of like, right, the last time she opened her heart up to someone fully, it kind of blew up and like she fell to pieces afterwards, like after losing him. It's like getting that close to someone, giving someone your all, and then like having it happen. Like, so there's been little bits here and there, like some romantic stuff. I'm always curious. My thought was always, I was curious about was like the Ralph thing. Even aside from the Sue thing, like if the Ralph story continued as it was before, you know, was it Hartley Sawyer got fired? Like, if they had continued down that route, would we have eventually gotten like a Caitlyn and Ralph thing or like a Ralph and Frost thing? I wasn't sure. Because I felt like his story that story could have gone either way with either one of them. But part of me wonders, is that where like the Mark comes into it all? Because it's like maybe they were planning on like a... But I always, like, once again, there was always the Sue thing, but the Sue thing might have been made more like, all right, later on, it's like, we're going to make that more of a thing because Ralph is going to be off screen because, yeah, for, you know, those reasons. So I'm curious. So that's why I'm always wondering, because I always felt like there might have been something there. And then obviously before there was a little bit of a Julian and her thing back in season 3. So it just never stuck. And I think that's always, like, ever since Ronnie died, she's been kind of putting herself out there a little bit, but not a lot. And so talking to Mark this episode, after she kind of went ham on both Mark and Frost, because you could tell she was being a little bit of an overprotective sister, but it's also because she was deflecting her own issues onto their relationship. And Mark kind of saw through it. It's like, I get it. Like, the fact is, you know, you don't like the fact that she's with me, someone who sees and accepts Frost's warts and all. And it's like, right, it's just like, right, you wanted to deflect and focus on our relationship rather than focus on, like, because you could tell how awkward she was around Marcus. You could tell she was definitely, like, keeping him at a distance, especially when earlier Chester and Allegra were asking a little bit about it, because, like, Chester was saying, like, oh, the future and stuff like that. You know, it's like, oh, maybe he could be part of Team Flash. It's like, well, the last significant other she had that was a part of Team Flash things didn't work out, you know? So, obviously, that probably triggered a little bit of that too, but it's something she's been dealing with for a very long time, but it just made her not want to take any relationship all the way. But talking to Mark, which even Frost was like, wait, my Mark gave you that advice? It's like, yeah, but it's also because she was a little jealous. It's like, you guys have so much fun, you're so open with each other. She's like, yeah, we do have our complications, yeah, but it's like, you make it seem so easy. So she apologizes and she's willing to take that chance. That's the scary thing about love. It may not always work out. There's always the fear of what you might lose, but as Mark said, also you have to start thinking about not about what you could lose, think about what you can gain. So I thought that was sweet. And I also love he did a douchey thing of, yeah, thanks for paying off for the drinks, and bounces afterwards. So I love it. But I thought that was kind of sweet. And obviously, you know, Frost is like, cool, like, we're going to do something like, I don't know if it was like roller derby or something she was saying, because she was like, oh, do you have a mouth guard? It's like, no, but I can get one. It's like, cool, all 4 of us, we're going to do it. So yeah, but Caitlyn's kind of like, okay, but then you could tell she's happy. It's like, yeah, finally finding some way to kind of move forward, and she's kind of in a better space now. So I thought that was just kind of nice. Relationships all around in some shape or form in this episode. Then we get our stinger, where we're continuing from last episode's stinger, where Iris is having dinner with Joe, and she's about to like stick her fork in the rest of the food because she's, oh, let me get one more bite, and it disappears. She's like, what? First the fork, then everything, and then Joe walks in. I was like, what just happened? And she comes in with a box. He comes in with a box, and she's like, wait, where you? I thought you were just upstairs. He's like, I was. At first I was like, wait, did we just undo the thing? Like, I was like, are we gonna make it so that your sister doesn't exist? What happened? It's like her being held in place timelines, because we know she got scattered across time, like different timelines and stuff, and that the still force has to keep her together. But maybe after everything with Eobard, it's slowly like, since she kind of had to unravel herself a little bit to see what Eobard had done, and now like put herself back together, or maybe her condition, like it was a band-aid, and now that band-aid is no longer helping because the wound is infected. Because that's why I'm like, at first I was like, he was like, yeah, you told me. He's like, yeah, maybe you're losing your memory a little bit because that, that's good eating. I'm like, so she did eat. So what we're seeing is time moving forward, like around her. And her, like for her, time is at a standstill, but it's almost like it's almost like Click. How when Adam Sandler like would autopilot through life, it's almost like that's happening to her. In her mind, it's like where I just was is where time was, but time is moving around you, and it's and it's slowly unraveling more and more, I think. So I think it might be a thing of she has to be careful, or she might just like fast forward her way through it. Because it doesn't seem like she this was like maybe like a couple minutes, maybe. Because that might also be why the brush disappeared. I was like, oh, it's that time unraveling. But in the sense of like, oh, it's like, I thought like because of what Bart and Nora did, that there was some correlation there. I think it's more so, it's an Iris thing specifically. So time is moving forward around her. And I think probably eventually is going to expedite faster and faster and faster until like maybe she eventually does completely break apart and split across the timeline again. Or it could just be like, once again, she just, very click-wise, just ends up fast-forwarding through like most of her life. Like it's like, oh, it might be like a couple minutes here, then you get into hours, days, weeks, months, years maybe. So that's definitely going to be interesting to see whether that ends up being what that is, and what's the root cause of it. Like I said, I'm sure it's all that stuff finally coming to a head. Like I said, I think Dion can only hold it back a small fraction, and now it's like going full force now. So I think now it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of compensate with that. Maybe Barry's new speed can help alleviate that to some extent, because he does have his flash time, and maybe something in correlation with that and the other forces might end up. For a while, Dion was the cure, but like I said, I think it was always just a temporary thing. So we'll have to wait and see where things kind of go from here. I'm excited to find out. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.